Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining today's session. My name is Thacker. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for EMEA for Netskope. And today I'll be talking about my experiences as a CISO, someone who's involved in information security and also IT delivery, and a change agent that has become digital transformation. So I've spent 20 years in the industry, and over the past few years, I've seen some of the biggest changes caused by, of course, digital transformation. So this topic is usually fascinating. We see lots of organizations living through digital transformation, especially over the past few years. This could be either project-based, or we even see digital transformation becoming a kind of BAU item now. But of course, it does impact security teams, and obviously the CISO is at the table when we start seeing organizations focusing on digital transformation and the requirements that the security team also need to deliver on. So I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes covering this, sharing some examples, and also just sharing some other examples we see that CISO are engaged in this space. So what better way to start off with a quote from Charles Darwin, the father of evolution, highlighting that it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. And I think when we start thinking about this, we know that, again, from a CIO, a CISO, and a CTO perspective, we've all had to consider and adapt to the changes around us. Right? Of course, no better than to think about the last year, the impact that's had on our organizations and how we've had to change very quickly, of course, to support our businesses. But as I highlighted, most organizations are going through a phased transformation driven by digital. This digital transformation has an impact in 4 key areas: network transformation, security transformation, application transformation, as well as data transformation. So again, the next slide will be covering this in terms of some of the details around how that actually affects us and our organizations. So this is just, again, a high-level assessment on the impact of digital transformation. We see CIOs, CISOs, CTOs observing this move away from what we considered the kind of the standard operating platform in the year 2000 was, again, majority of employees were office-based. We had many data centers, and we were using VPN to connect, again, our branches back into those data centers. It's a model that, of course, we've kind of evolved away from over the last few years. But if I actually track this, we can see where organizations are today. The average organization is kind of sat here in the middle in this blue section, with an explosion of SaaS applications, extending their data centers out to the cloud, and even in some cases, of course, using serverless and edge computing to meet specific requirements. And that's where the average organization is. We see some kind of trailblazer organizations in kind of the 5th section here on the far right, where they're now converging network and security controls. They've built a mature hybrid or full cloud ecosystem, and they're even using kind of the fundamentals around, again, secure access service edge. So, but today I'm going to be talking about those last 3 sections and how organizations have kind of are moving and evolving. And for any organization that's still in perhaps a phase 1 or phase 2, how they're also making strides and moving into those last 3 sections. Of course, with those, there comes a focus on capability requirements. And for instance, we see a lot of organizations today running kind of SD-WAN projects, implementing cloud access security brokers, looking at cloud threat and data protection, but also moving into the point where they're now looking at their secure gateway and enhancing to a next-gen secure gateway, and including, again, cloud user entity behavior analytics, and also focusing on a centralized IaaS protection platform, not looking at just native tools. To the point also that I highlighted, again, the organizations that are furthest to the right, now utilizing, again, things such as zero trust network access, firewall as a service components to really deliver on that transformation plan. So as I said, we'll go through those last 3 columns here, and just some examples of how organizations are doing this today. So again, I'll start off with, again, the first section here. And this is, again, the stage 3, what we consider stage 3 deliverables. So the first is around looking at, again, how the organization has actually assessed their cloud profile. Again, which services are they using? Are they using a combination of IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS? To the point that they're building out an inventory. So this inventory, for instance, will be used to categorize cloud services. Some of this has been driven by regulatory requirements. So Article 30 of the GDPR is one example. Keeping a record of processing activities is key. But even most frameworks and standards, again, require organizations to keep an inventory of key assets and service providers. Step 3 is then looking at, again, enhancing their telemetry of high-risk services and how they're, again, handling and processing high-risk data. So this is actually linking the application or service risk to the data risk. And it's key to understand if you're, of course, sharing sensitive data with a third party, again, who actually owns and is responsible for the controls around that data. Again, the fourth deliverable is looking at, again, how organizations are prioritizing and thinking about, again, how every type of activity is aligned back to a valid business justification. So again, linking the use of cloud and digital services to specific requirements. And this is key to become a business enabler. Again, the justification here needs to be considered, and also thinking about the compensating controls that can be applied. And then finally, again, this is an optional. I've seen a number of CISOs actually target and use this type of approach, where they're looking at tiering specific services, so applying a level of risk, control, and mitigation to specific services. So as an example, a tier 1 provider, somebody like again, a Microsoft 365 or a Google Workspace will be considered a tier 1 productivity applications that are used every day, with, again, very robust, very tight security controls that can be applied, versus, for instance, a tier 4 service that may be, again, a one-time use. There aren't any native controls. There can't be anything that can be applied as a form of mitigation, like a PDF converter or, again, mapping or mapping type tools and requirements. And organizations putting their own specific type controls around this, or even just blocking access to these services. There has to be an exception, for instance, that's completed. So you can see, again, these are kind of, again, 5 deliverables across that stage 3 that can help, of course, an organization, especially from a transformation perspective, but also from a risk mitigation perspective. Now, you would think that, again, these things are very manual, but the great thing is that security vendors have built these capabilities into their tools. Just again, as an example, at Netskope, we have 40,000 cloud apps that have a risk score. Each of those cloud applications has a RAG status. Again, so you can actually see that in many cases, again, we're putting a red, amber, green score against this. And even for each application itself, there's a composite score that can be used to set policy. This is not separate, but it's built into the product. So it can actually be used as a form of identification of risk. So let's now start thinking about that stage 4 deliverable. And this is when the cloud becomes the operating model. As organizations migrate more and more workloads to the cloud, so follows the security. As an example, we're working with a large German automobile manufacturer who started this transformation program last year. A financial services organization that's doing this right now. Their goal is to be, again, cloud only by 2025. But they're a cloud-first organization today. So let's start looking through these deliverables, again, specifically for, again, organizations that are in this stage. So one of the focuses is around now applying a policy. So once those high-risk services and high-risk data flows have been identified, it's putting in the policies, allowing blocking, in some cases educating and coaching employees when accessing high-risk services with high-risk data flow. Applying a threat protection policy to all web and cloud traffic. The challenge has been that organizations have had to rely on exceptions. And in this case, we know that these exceptions, again, have been utilized by, again, threat actors. When you put in something in an allowed list that doesn't inspect for malware, attackers can quite simply, again, deliver their malware through that channel. So we're seeing more and more organizations realizing that allowed lists can no longer just be applied to their cloud traffic. There has to be a form of threat protection applied. The same for data protection. Again, I think organizations were very strict around access and usage of removable media. But as we think about cloud, the cloud is now well over 300,000 cloud apps offering, and many of them offering file upload features. So it's, again, it can be considered a primary data exfil channel. And it's inevitable that, again, organizations will see a challenge around this. So applying, again, a form of data protection here is key. Looking at becoming cloud instance aware. So looking at how your organization is handling, again, and using cloud apps. And again, are they a combination of corporate, personal, third party? It's most likely they are. So we're seeing organizations wanting to understand the better context and the better granular controls that can be applied to instances. So becoming, again, instance aware and applying those differing policies. And then finally, at this point, looking at educating the workforce. So identifying when there's a use of new high-risk services, and also aligning policies so they can actually apply, again, better secure configurations to these services across SaaS, PaaS, and SaaS services. Again, this is just one example. Again, security vendors have built these capabilities into their tools. This is an example of Netskope's advanced analytics that shows data flows across web cloud apps. You can see here, again, we're actually working with a number of organizations that perform this exercise manually that now want to automate this. So they're actually looking at, again, building these active Sankey data flow diagrams. We have a large pharmaceutical organization using this to track intellectual property that's going to specific countries. Again, it's not a separate capability here, it's built into the product, and it can be shown in real time in terms of the activities that are occurring. From a stage 5 perspective, again, this is now in the kind of upper echelons of maturity. There's quite a few more buzzword acronyms in here. SASE is, again, a common term now referred to. It was originally coined by Gartner in 2019 about being highlighted as the future of network and security. But there's other things here, such as zero trust network access and firewall as a service, where we're seeing organizations really harness to focus on their stage 5 deliverables. So this would include, for instance, migrating network controls to the cloud for this mature hybrid or full cloud adoption approach. Again, focusing on egress firewalls, for instance, that can be replaced is a very good and cost-effective option. Moving away even from zero trust network access to include a zero trust data protection. If you're familiar with the shared responsibility model, you'll know that, again, access control and data protection, again, are some of the responsibilities that get passed down by the cloud service providers to the organization, the customer. And I was speaking to a CISO this morning that highlighted that she's building a whole program around ZTNA and as in zero trust data protection too. Looking at how organizations can automate risk-based conditional access controls, and looking at how security programs are becoming more risk-based data-centric and more than ever. And even organizations looking at risk in terms of defining profiles of risk across a number of areas, such as employee, device, application, or even data. And then I guess finally is preparing for the next evolution, because I'm sure in the next 10 years, there'll be another transformation project, again, perhaps machine-based or platform-based or crowd-based, getting ready for, again, future decades. But one of the things I wanted to highlight as well is around, I mentioned that access control and conditional access. This is where we see a number of organizations really focusing on how they can help automate this. And this is just one example of an organization focusing on how they can actually measure more appropriately device risk and combine that with application risk and combine that with user risk, and also look at data risk to get a much truer picture, again, of a certain type of activity. In this example here, this is, again, Thomas Muller, who's accessing his favorite cloud applications, such as Box. But of course, you can see there are many variables that can actually introduce risk to their organization. And the outcomes can be very different based on any one of those variables. So today, scoring these variables, focusing on policy to protect the organization across many of these variables becomes key also. So with this focus on, again, the journey through digital transformation, those are the kind of the 3 important phases and some, again, perhaps some example deliverables that you and your organization can focus on. For me, some of the other takeaways is that, again, every CISO really should be thinking about how they can mitigate a risk and improve security posture for their organization, enabling centralized policy through, again, looking at configuration management and better reporting. Of course, rolling out new security services faster than ever. Whenever there's a new requirement, of course, security has to keep up with the business. But also thinking about improving, again, user experience, better performance, a better end user satisfaction. It's quite rare that applying a security control will actually, again, improve performance or improve satisfaction. But aligning this with those kind of 3 key phases of transformation, including that as part of that security transformation, is actually also possible. It can be used to also achieve these results. Accelerating threat detection and response, of course, is always key, but also through this focus, consolidation, focusing on how that, again, time and money can be reduced in focusing on this consolidation, and also thinking about how, again, you're supporting the kind of top line growth of the organization through enabling digital transformation, but at the same time as well, supporting that bottom line, again, by focusing on, again, the right investments at the right time. So with that, again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening. If anybody would like a copy of the presentation, my email address is on screen, so you can reach out to me. We are going to have a few minutes for questions, and perhaps I'll start the ball rolling. First question I get asked is, how does an organization save money and reduce risk? It sounds like the kind of the nirvana. The response is usually standard economics. So thinking about how we simplify, how we consolidate, moving away from, again, the hub-spoke model. It was an expensive model. It was expensive to run WAN circuits and corporate networks. Security appliances are very expensive and have to be refreshed every 3 to 5 years. So yeah, organizations moving to the cloud can see that this is a good option. It's scalable, it's more cost effective, you pay for what you use, it's microservice delivered. Again, it can be more effectively managed. The second question is usually around, again, what analysts are referring to this. Is it just Gartner that refers to this transformation? And as I said, Gartner have a great paper. The future of network security is in the cloud. But if you speak to every analyst organization, Forrester have some great material on Zero Trust Edge. IDC have some great survey information around the growth of this market, 15 to 20% growth every year until 2024, where there's potential increase there as well. But they also have some great stats around, again, the reduced spend on networking components and those things as well. So again, with the time remaining, again, if you have any more questions, I'll be more than happy to take them. Otherwise, you can also reach out to me on the email address on screen. A really easy email address to remember, nthacker@netscope.com.